Sljedeće naše izlaganje je na temu portreta Patriarha Porfirija, a izlagač je naša već stalna gošća i da ne kažem i domaćin sada članove naše velike familije, Danica Igrutinović sa Univerziteta Singidunum iz Beograda.
Hvala puno, Ljiljana. Hvala svima. I will actually be speaking in English because this panel is quite international today, as I have seen. So I'm thinking it's more appropriate because of our guests from abroad. This is actually my 4th year here, and I plan to continue this tradition. I'm very, very grateful for you having me here again this year. So this is a paper that's still very much a work in progress. I had actually been hoping that it would be a relatively narrow topic because of such a short time span that is being covered, but actually it proved to be extremely broad. So what I have promised and what I will try to deliver is a very, very brief panoramic overview of the main issues that have been mentioned in the previous 3 years. So I'll start with a little bit of context. So following the dissolution of, well, at least officially non-aligned Yugoslavia, Serbia has been attempting to establish its identity as a post-socialist, post-Ottoman, post-secular, post-war, and in some ways perennially liminal country, meaning that it is somehow always between great powers, between empires, which leads to certain internal problems as well. So what happens as a result is, among other things, this revitalization or the reassertion of the prominence of the concept of the so-called two Serbias. The first Serbia and the other Serbia. It can be explained by concepts such as Le Mans symbolic boundaries or Seinfeld's fault lines. These are emerging groups, often present only in discourse, but not necessarily as actual political agents with any real power. This is only really truly present only in discourse. However, this discourse is increasingly loud and problematic. So the two Serbias would be like the first Serbia and the other Serbia. First Serbia being more traditional, more aligned with traditional religiosity, and increasingly it gives more importance to ethnic national identity, and it is increasingly, at least in recent times, seen as pro-Russian. On the other hand, other Serbia being seen as more modern, cosmopolitan, less invested in ethnic identity, and more aligned with the EU or the so-called symbolic West, whatever that means. This situation, at least in my view, means that it is quite difficult to forge this national identity that I have been talking about, and there's a lot of strife involved. Also, so unlike many states through history that have encompassed this region, the Serbian Orthodox Church has served as some sort of a keeper of ethnic identity, at least partly. So identity is not associated with the state, because many states have changed here and many have been seen as inimical to the very concept of ethnic identity, but the church has been seen as a keeper of this ethnic identity. This would lead us to potentially useful theoretical frameworks for anyone dealing with religiosity in this part of the world, which include here post-secular hybrids, which would be novel connections between the sacred and the secular that are extant in the post-secular world. Then various versions of religious nationalism in general, and in particular, mostly religio-sexual nationalism as theorized by Sremac. Both have explanatory power for the phenomena observable in Serbia, and that is, first, a lot of belonging without believing, specific belongings to specific religions as a differentia specifica of ethnic belonging, and religion being used as instrumental or instrumentalized in various identity struggles, which are often, not always, but increasingly so, based on geopolitical divisions also. The religious-sexual nationalism anywhere can often be described in one sentence. So as many ethnic Serbs or Germans or French or whatever as possible, occupying as much territory as possible, and how to facilitate this aim using religion. So there are two axes that can be seen usually in a lot of discourse that has existed, let's say, has been seen by various actors seeing themselves as representatives of Serbian Orthodox Church. That would, so there are two different parts of this that we can identify or analyze. One of them pertains to territory, so all the territories that can be seen to be under the auspices of the Serbian Orthodox Church, and according to some, especially First Serbia authors, under the aegis of Serbian ethnic identity and possible future countries as well. Montenegro is not mentioned here. And the other axis is everything pertaining to so-called gender issues, which are associated with demographic issues and identity issues. So anything pertaining to abortion, the Gay Pride Parade, and gender in general, which includes both feminism and various identities related to that. Or unrelated to that. So very quickly, the aim of this paper is because Patriarch Porfirije has ascended to the throne at a time of increasing geopolitical tensions, mirrored in the culture wars of Serbia. This has occasioned a surprisingly substantial volume of commentary in online media discourse, and I will try to present a brief overview of the main issues here. So background to this is that Porfirije had been prominent in the media before his enthronement and widely known in music and art circles. And there was cautious jubilation in the news, at the news when this happened. For instance, in the foreign news, we can see it in a Deutsche Welle article from 21, the title, "The Rock and Roll Patriarch Belies a Geopolitical Expectation." The Western media had for years presented this, the Serbian Orthodox Church as a Russian proxy in the Balkans. And there was this idea that the Serbian Orthodox Church would turn to the West because of the Patriarch's musical taste. On the other hand, we have in the Serbian media, again, this celebrating the news, this expectation that there would be, again, punk rock is, one would say that it's like an atheist equivalent to Serbian Orthodoxy and religious nationalism. So signaling a potential belonging to a group identity that was somehow expected because of this musical taste. So offering a very brief panoramic view of all the issues that have followed in the brief 3 years that we have had Porfirije as Patriarch. With these expectations, it was hardly surprising that many negative reactions came from First Serbia actors. So when the church in North Macedonia received autocephaly in 22, after a decades-long schism, there were strong negative reactions from some First Serbia commenters, mostly on account of church property. There were, in the news, you could see a lot of talk about how well received the news was, including during the liturgy when the Thomas was read, there was clapping. I was actually present at that liturgy, and while there was clapping, there was a lot of very angry murmuring and muttering around me. It was definitely not as simple as the mainstream media presented it. In alternative media, you could see a lot of talk about betrayal and immediately connecting the issue to Kosovo, which again, there is a lot of discourse on Kosovo. I'm just barely touching on this in these two paragraphs that I have, which you probably can see. So First Serbia authors have leveled numerous accusations of silence and of selling Kosovo, especially after the Ohrid Accord was signed. On the other hand, other Serbia commenters leveled similar accusations, albeit sarcastic. So, Porfirije's consistent pacifism was asserted in official statements, and it was consistently derided by other Serbia commenters, which is interesting to say the slightest. Porfirije is often accused of blindly following President Vučić by both sides in all issues. It is other Serbia representatives that react more vehemently to the issues in Montenegro, most notably the enthronement of Metropolitan Joannikije in 21, which went according to original plan amid violent protests. Here, from these other Serbia commenters, Porfirije is accused of insufficient pacifism and causing ethnic, religious, and other conflicts. So there are much stronger reactions than this, actually, that accompany the involvement of the Patriarch in recent manifestations related to the Republic of Srpska. Most notably, the prayer at the Temple of Saint Sava, which was part of the so-called All-Serbian Assembly. There are parallels in various media drawn with both the Russian world, so-called, and Nazi Germany. Those criticizing the Russian world are trying to assert the idea that the pro-Russian factor is the decisive factor in these dealings, which neglects the ties of Republic of Serbia that it has with Israel. So it does not fully compute geopolitically, one might say. Still, the involvement of the Serbian Orthodox Church was seen as a breach of secularity, and there was a lot of consternation about that. Now, moving on to so-called gender issues, the issues pertaining to demographics and identity. Much ink was spilled on statements made by Porfirije on the topic of same-sex unions and the apparent changes in the official stance in the discourse. However, a careful analysis of the actual words used by Porfirije and then later by the Synod reveals very little actual change in the wording and the position itself. A reminder is useful at this point that this is a par excellence geopolitical issue. So here we can see a map of places where same-sex unions exist and where they do not, and it is or where same-sex marriages exist, and this is neatly divided along the Western Eastern Europe lines. So in this case, one could say that there could have been a practical solution to this, as Porfirije actually mentioned, both in the first and the second iteration of this, but nobody was really interested in practical solutions. Both sides were, again, more interested in signaling adherence and allegiance to certain higher powers or whatever. The Serbian Orthodox Church does not, however, in recent years, not in 21 at least, and before that, since 2015 until 2022, does not officially denounce the holding of the Pride Parade. That is until Europride. And this can possibly be ascribed to the Russian factor. So in 2022, in Patriarch Kirill's sermon, it is stated that there is a test of loyalty to the West, and that is holding a gay pride parade. And this is actually, I took this picture during one of the protests against the gay pride parade in 22. This, you can see the huge flag and where the Serbian and the Russian parts of the flag are merged. This is again, very clearly a geopolitical issue and not necessarily anything else. This can be, Kirill's sermon can be interpreted as pressure on Serbia before Europride, which has clear geopolitical ramifications, obviously. So reacting to numerous processions, Patriarch Porfirije personally leads a public prayer in 22 for the sanctity of marriage and family, preceded by a procession for the salvation of Serbia. And an interesting sleight of hand happens here. The Patriarch expresses his opposition to the Europride parade while issuing a request that the state withdraw the disputed textbooks mentioning gender and homosexuality in the school textbooks. Most notably, oh, sorry. In his speech at this procession, which connects ethno-national, religious, and gender-based identity, we can see an eloquent exposition of what are main points in any theoretical exposition of religiosexual nationalism. So, which is otherwise a rarity in Porfirije's public speech. One must really notice that. We can also notice a paradigm of otherness emerging whose elements are interchangeable. So if the Gay Pride Parade is not something we can safely denounce, we can move on to something similar enough that is more palatable at the moment. Both geopolitical and local rifts reach something of a climax at this point, resulting in the other Serbia organizing a petition against religious education for the secular state. And we witness here a full schism where Djindjić's conciliatory legacy is finally fully abandoned, and there is no more debate, no attempt at persuading the other side of anything. And we can see more examples of accusations that Porfirije is closely allied with Vučić's regime. Both sides are actually consistently engaged in this. This schism continues to intensify in what we can term the gender wars, which are much, much broader issues this is an incident that an entire book can be dedicated to, and I will just briefly mention that the church at this point begins lobbying against the new law on gender equality, especially gender-sensitive language, juxtaposing gender-sensitive language with the Serbian language, which again has this ethnic component and introduces this binary between ethnicity and a sort of a global Western potential conspiracy in some cases, in some moments. There is during this entire ordeal, we could say that there is particularly a Serbian commentary that follows, mostly from other Serbian authors. And the last but not the least is the still current issue of the mining of lithium in regions of Serbia under the auspices of Rio Tinto, where the Patriarch is once again accused of selling out for profit, owing to insufficient commentary from the church on this issue. The protests themselves appear to be ideologically hybrid, so attacks come here from both sides again. In conclusion, there is an observable tendency for all parts to choose the other geopolitically. So the question sometimes can be which element of a broad paradigm is currently geopolitically prudent to be used as a foil for which actor. For instance, the first Serbia can see that anti-gender rhetoric is broadly more palatable to the West than anti-gay rhetoric, and other Serbia can, of course, have vague anti-Russian discourse to cover a plethora of actual specific issues. And from this development, we can actually see this can give us some pointers on actual geopolitical leanings of both groups, which might be discursively different at many points, but might not actually be. The signals that we receive are not quite as diverse or as inimical to each other as we are led to believe. At least this is how I read this as someone who comes from literature, not politics, but this is how I read the language and the signals. So the signals might be indicating pro-Western leaning on both sides at this point in time, which is interesting, of course. So Porfirije himself, when speaking officially and on his Instagram profile, uses mostly theological discourse, unlike some previous patriarchs who were, well, especially Irina, I have to say, who used a lot of political discourse a lot of the time. This is not true of Porfirije. His tone is mostly conciliatory, and he himself notices many times the very topic of this paper, so exacerbation of conflicts in the media, extreme polarization brought about, among other factors, by online media, especially social media, but also interests of various powers that might be behind this. In this extreme polarization, speaking cynically, one could say that a kind of national unity is established via attacks from both sides on the patriarch. So we can see that some sort of national identity is established because both sides attack the patriarch in unison. So thank you very much for your attention.
15 seconds to clear. Hvala puno, Danici.